it's good to have you back in this section. Okay, we're going to do a quick summary of what we learned in the previous section. We started by talking about democracy. We defined democracy. We defined states. We talked about the characteristics of states. We talked about sovereignty. Then finally, we talked about the international organization. We talked about the AU. We also talked about the Commonwealth. And we said Nigeria is a member of the Commonwealth. That is where we're going to start from. We're going to be looking at questions surrounding several international organizations. JAMB questions, questions that are like the questions they normally ask in JAMB examination. The first one we have is this. It says, number one, it says, which organization, which country pioneered the ECOWAS? Which country pioneered the ECOWAS? If you see a question, now we have an option. A, we have Cameroon. B, we have Ghana. C, we have Togo. And D, we have Benin Republic. Benin Republic. When you see a question like this, what comes to your mind? Now, you need to go back to the origin of ECOWAS. You go back to the origin of ECOWAS. ECOWAS has its headquarters in Nigeria, Abuja. It has two headquarters. It has the administrative headquarters in Abuja, and it has like the commercial headquarters in Togo, Lomé. So the answer here is Lomé, is Togo. Togo and Nigeria pioneered the formation of ECOWAS. The formation of ECOWAS. So if you pick Togo, you are correct. If you pick Togo, you're correct. Now, the second question. The second question says, which organization existed during the Second World War. Second World War. If you see a question like this, now you go back to the history of the Second World War. The Second World War existed from 1945 to 1949. So which organization was in existence? This is the option. A, they have ECOWAS. B, European Union. C, United Nations. D, African Union. You have a question like this. Now, ECOWAS existed in the 1970s. It was formed in the 1970s. European Union also came into existence in the 90s as well. Then you have African Union. African Union is in the 2000. Remember, we said 2002. So the answer here is United Nations. United Nations. United Nations. So this is your answer. Please take note of this. Don't get confused when you see questions like this. Please take note of this. Now, let's go to the next question. Let's go to the next question. Now, we have which country is not a member of the ECOWAS? Which country is not a member of ECOWAS? Which country is not a member of ECOWAS? Now our option, we have A, Mozambique. B, Ghana. C, Nigeria. D, we have Liberia. You have a question like this. Remember, the meaning of ECOWAS is Economic Community of West African States. Economic Community of West African States. Ghana is in West Africa. Liberia is in West Africa. Nigeria is in West Africa. So the only country is Mozambique. So the answer is Mozambique. Mozambique is not a member of the ECOWAS. Mozambique is not a member of the ECOWAS. All right, we're going to be looking at some of our questions. Look at the board. Look at the board. We have about 5 questions. I'll begin with the first one. I'll begin with the first question. It says, each member state is represented on the board of governors of OPEC for a period of dash. Now, what is OPEC? Remember, OPEC is one of the international organizations. It stands for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. These are countries that export what? Petroleum. So Nigeria is a member of this organization. Now they are asking for how long, for how many, for what's the period of years? A says 2 years, B says 3 years, C says 4 years, and D says 1 year. Don't get confused. The answer is 2 years. 2 years. So it's a period of 2 years. Please don't forget. Then the next question says, which of the following society was classified as acephalous? We're going to pre-colonial administration in Nigeria. This is the topic, pre-colonial administration in Nigeria. Now we are looking at Igbo land, pre-colonial administration in eastern part of Nigeria. Now, look at the answers. It says Benin, Ibibio, Igbo, and Ijo. The state, the society that was classified as acephalous was Igbo, the Igbo pre-colonial society. Another word for acephalous simply means classless or stateless. Stateless, what do they mean? They never had a king at that time. They are the society we called decentralized society. Decentralized society. They lived in smaller groups, community. They practiced the age grade system. The age grade system. Can you remember the Umunna, the oldest man in the community? Go back to your pre-colonial administration in eastern part of Nigeria. Please don't forget. Then the next question says, the distinctive attribute of a state is the monopoly of what? Is the monopoly of what? This question is tricky. Very, 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 very tricky. Remember, in JAMB, there are lots of tricky questions. Yes. Then let me give you a little idea. The answer is always the one that summarizes the question. The answer is the one that summarizes the question. Now, this is talking about the definition or the characteristics of a state. Let's go back to our definition. Remember, I told you that a state must have what? Must have a geographical location. Then we talked about it must be free from what? Now you have control, you have power, you have violence, you have justice. The question looks tricky, but the answer is what? Control. It must be, the state must have a monopoly of control. It should be able to control its territory. So the answer is A, not power. Not power. Control is the answer. That's why I said it is tricky. It is tricky. So please take note of this. Then we're still looking at another state question. It says, a state as a political entity. Remember, a state is a political entity. What makes it a political entity? It has an organized system, which stands as government. It has a definite territory. It has population. So it is an organized political what? Entity. So now let's look at the definition, the best definition. This is another tricky question. It says, an organized group within a definite territory, A, that's A. A branch of a nation, that's B. An association of men in a given society. An association of men in a given society. A geographical location. Like A and D almost sounds alike. They are almost similar. Don't get confused. I told you the last time that the answer summarizes what? The question. The particular answer that summarizes what? The question. Now let's go again. An organized group within a definite territory, a branch of a nation, an association of men in a given society, a geographical what? Location. Wow. Which answer would you have chosen? Which answer would you have chosen? Okay, don't think further. Our answer is A. Our answer is A. An organized group within a definite territory. Remember when we defined a state? Yes, it's not just geographical location. A state must have geographical location, but it must have a group of people in it with a definite territory. So the answer is A. The answer is A. Please take note, these questions repeat themselves. At times they will twist it, you get a little confused, but it's simple. Remember the rule. The answer that summarizes the whole question. The answer. Now imagine, let's place this answer to this number 4 statement. Let's place the answer. State as a political entity refers to an organized group within a definite territory. I hope you got that. I'm going to say it again. State as a political entity refers to an organized group within a definite what? Territory. So 2 key words here, organized group and definite territory. So if you just say geographical location, no, you're wrong. Please take note of that. So our answer is A. Now let's go to our last question before we end this section. The French colonial system was underlined by the policy of dash. By the policy of dash. Now we are looking at colonial administration. This topic falls under the topic we call colonial administration in Africa. Colonial administration in Africa. Remember, Nigeria was colonized by the British. So we had 2 different, the British made use of indirect rule. Don't forget, I'm just giving us a recap just to remind us of what you have read over time. So now we're looking at the French colonial system. So now A says assimilation, B says paternalism, C says socialism, D says indirect rule. Please don't get confused. This is not a tricky question. It's not. It's straight to the point. If you have read, you won't find this difficult. These are basic concepts. So indirect rule is wrong. The British made use of indirect rule. So what is our answer? What is our answer? Our answer is policy of assimilation. Policy of assimilation. That was the French colonial system of administration. That was what they used. Please Don't forget this. These things are easy. Once you know the terms, once you have studied and you're able to memorize all you have read, you won't have difficulty answering this question. Now we're looking at some questions. I have about 6 questions in this section. The number 1 question says, the private ownership of the means of production. The private ownership of the means of production is a feature of. Now, before you answer this question, you must know, now we have options. We have capitalism, socialism, communalism, communism. Now, you must know the definition of terms of each of those words. You go back to knowing the definition of terms. Capitalism has to do with private ownership of the means of production. Socialism has to do with what? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with collective ownership. Communalism has to do with the collective ownership of land and all that. So you see that the answer here is what? Capitalism, private ownership of the means of production. So always go back, before you answer any question, you have to look at the definition of the words there. Go back to your definition, recall them and all that. Then number 2 question says, rule by the old people is known as dash. Rule by the old people is known as dash. This topic is known as, this 2 topic falls under what we call basic concept of government. Basic concept of government. Now let's look at what we have. What is monarchy? Remember, monarchy has to do with the rule of kingship, leadership by kingship, rulership by kingship, don't forget. Gerontocracy. What is gerontocracy? Rule by the old people. Rule by the old people, or leadership by the old people. That's the meaning of gerontocracy. Now, feudalism. Feudalism has to do with rulership when it has to do with land possession of lands, where you have the serf and all that, and the feudal lords. Remember, going back to the definition, the serf and the feudal lords, that's what feudalism has to do with. Then, theocracy, leadership by religious leaders, the Pope, the Imam. So what do you think is the answer? What do you think is the answer? The answer is what? Gerontocracy. Gerontocracy. Rule by the old people. Rule by the old people. Now, number 3 question says, rules adjudication is a function of. Rules adjudication is a function of. That question looks tricky, but it is not. You may want to choose government. I know you know the function of the legislature. They make laws and implement laws. The executive, they execute and they implement laws. The judiciary, they interpret laws and all that. The government is in charge of this, but it is not the government. The answer is the judiciary. Is the judiciary. Going back to the functions of the 3 arms of government. What is the function of the judiciary? So the answer is the judiciary. Rules adjudication is a function of the judiciary. Please take note of that. Then secondly, and then let's look at this question. A constitution that is difficult to amend. A constitution that is difficult to amend. This is a tricky question. A tricky question. I hope you know that listed here are types of constitution. We have the written, the flexible, the unwritten, the confederal, the federal, the unitary, and all that. So, you may look at it. Is it rigid? Is it written? Which answer? It cannot be flexible. You know that. So you are left with these 3 options. What do you think is the answer? What do you think is the answer? Is it rigid constitution? Is it written constitution? It's between these 2, but don't. It's between these 2 answers, but don't get confused. Don't get confused. The answer is written constitution. It is written constitution. Written constitution is difficult to amend. Nigeria practices a written constitution. That is why we are having issue amending our constitution. The constitution is rigid, but it's also what? Written. So the answer is B. Please take note of this. Now, which of the following advocates equitable distribution of wealth? Which of the following advocates equitable distribution of wealth? We're still looking at the basic concept of government. Remember, we're looking at the basic concept of government. Now we have capitalism, aristocracy, socialism, plutocracy. Now, you may be wondering, which of them is the answer? This is not a tricky question. It's not tricky in any way. It's not. The answer here is what? Socialism. Socialism. Socialism advocates the equitable distribution of wealth among the people in the society. So please take note of this. Socialism. Socialism. Now, our last question for this section is tricky. Very tricky. Please look at this. The right of citizens to vote is, the right of citizens to vote is, you have universal suffrage, you have national suffrage, you have electoral suffrage, you have adult suffrage. You may be wondering, go back to your definition of suffrage. What did they say? What is the definition? Like I said, the answer to the question, the answer summarizes what? The question. Now we're going to try each of them. The right of citizens to vote is universal suffrage. The right of citizens to vote is national suffrage. The right of citizens to vote is electoral suffrage. The right of citizens to vote is adult suffrage. So what do you think is the answer? All right, the answer is A, universal suffrage. Universal suffrage. Remember your definition of the right to vote and to be voted for, please. So this is the answer. This is the answer. All right, we're going to end here. We're going to take a break and we're going to continue again. Please take care.